The school hallways buzzed with the chatter of students, but when Mia walked in for the first time, the noise seemed to die down. She was the new girl, shy, quiet, dressed in simple clothes that didn't scream for attention. But that's exactly what got her attention, the wrong kind. A group of popular girls, Tessa, Brooke, and Leela, watched her from across the lockers with smirks curled across their lips. They didn't like how she didn't try to impress anyone. They didn't like how she just existed unbothered, untouched by their shallow world. It started with small things. A joke here, a bump in the hallway there, a whisper followed by laughter. Mia never responded. She kept her head down, too familiar with the cruelty that hides in fake smiles. She had moved to this school to escape a bad past, but bad had a way of finding her. One cold morning, things escalated. Tessa and her crew cornered Mia near the back of the schoolyard, where the cameras didn't reach. At first, they just mocked her, called her names, asked if her clothes were from a thrift shop for dead people. But then it got physical. They grabbed her backpack and threw it over the fence, and then they ripped her hoodie. One sharp tug, and the fabric tore down the sleeve. She gasped and tried to pull it back together, but they were laughing, recording it all on their phones. That moment burned itself into Mia's memory. The cold on her arms, the tears she fought back, the laughter echoing in her ears. They thought she was weak. They thought she'd do nothing. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Mia didn't report it. Not to teachers, not to her parents. Not yet. She was too smart for that. She'd learned long ago that sometimes justice doesn't come from asking. It comes from making it happen. She spent the next 2 weeks planning. She learned everything about her bullies, who they talked to, what they posted, what they feared. Tessa was terrified of spiders. Brooke hated public embarrassment. Leela, she had a secret boyfriend she was hiding from her perfect image. And Mia had a skill none of them knew about. She was a tech wizard. Quietly, in her free time, she'd built a reputation in her last school as someone who could hack anything. She'd won coding competitions under fake names. She wasn't just smart, she was dangerous. Revenge didn't come as a punch or a scream. It came as whispers, chaos, and poetic justice. On a Friday morning, Tessa opened her locker and screamed. It was filled with realistic-looking spiders, 3D printed with perfect detail, motorized legs twitching just enough to make them look alive. A crowd gathered. Someone posted the video. It went viral. Tessa the Tarantula Girl. The next day, Brooke's Instagram, normally full of perfect selfies and filtered beach shots, was hacked. It now showed her real face. Photos of her before makeup, before edits, her skin, her teeth, her flaws, things she desperately tried to hide. Every post had a caption, "This is the real me, and I'm not perfect." Leela's secret came out during lunch. Airdropped to every phone in the cafeteria was a picture of her, holding hands with the boy she swore she hated. Her lies unraveled in seconds. Her fake friends abandoned her before the bell rang. All of it anonymous, untraceable. But Mia made sure they knew. She left a note in each of their lockers. "I'm not the girl you should have messed with. You tore my clothes, but I tore apart your lives." Fair trade. They never spoke to her again. In fact, they avoided her, eyes wide with fear, silence swallowing their former arrogance. The video of them ripping her hoodie had disappeared. They had deleted it out of guilt or fear, no one knew. But the whole school had changed. People started being nicer, or at least more cautious. Mia didn't become popular. She didn't want to be. She stayed quiet, still wore simple clothes, still sat in the back of class. But there was a different kind of respect now, one that didn't need to be loud. She had taught them something powerful. Not all wounds bleed, not all revenge is loud, and sometimes the quietest people carry the sharpest knives. You tore my clothes, but I tore apart your lives. Fair trade. These 11 words weren't just a threat. They were a reckoning. A sentence that whispered through the school halls long after the chaos died down. They stared at the paper like it was soaked in venom. Their hands shook. Their stomachs twisted. Because in that moment, they realized something none of them had ever considered. The girl they mocked, cornered, humiliated, she wasn't weak. She was patient, calculated, and far more dangerous than they could ever be. Tessa remembered the look on Maya's face when they ripped her hoodie. Not the fear, not the helplessness. No, it was the calm. Like she wasn't breaking, she was absorbing, watching, recording. Tessa thought they'd won that day, standing over her with grins and phones high-fiving like it was all just a joke. But now, that same girl had slipped into their lives, not with fists, but with precision. She hadn't just exposed their fears. She had dismantled their image, their reputation, the fragile empire they'd built on glitter and lies. Brooke sat alone in the girl's bathroom, wiping her tears with trembling hands. Her followers had dropped by the hundreds. She kept refreshing her feed, hoping the damage would undo itself, but it didn't. The captions Mia had written were still there, honest and brutal. This is me. No filters, no lies. Every blemish she ever tried to hide was now public record. She used to feel powerful when people envied her. Now she felt naked, as if Mia had peeled off her skin and shown the world the truth underneath. Leela. She couldn't even make eye contact with anyone. Her perfect, polished identity had shattered. The boy she'd sworn was loser was now known to be her secret boyfriend. Her friends had turned on her instantly, because their loyalty wasn't real. It never was. They didn't care about her feelings. They cared about status. And Maya had burned that status to the ground. The beauty of Maya's revenge wasn't that it was loud. It was quiet, controlled, surgical. No one could prove it was her. But they knew. And that's what made it terrifying. She'd written those final words by hand, black ink, sharp letters, not a single smudge. She wanted them to see the precision. To feel it. You tore my clothes. But I tore apart your lives. Fair trade. They read it over and over again, but it didn't get softer. It didn't lose weight. It just sank deeper. How could someone so quiet be so ruthless? That question haunted them more than anything else. Because they weren't afraid of revenge. They were afraid of what it meant. They had met someone who didn't scream when she was hurt. She planned. She listened. She struck. Word spread fast. Not just about what had happened, but what hadn't. Maya didn't get suspended. She didn't get called to the office. There were no announcements, no apologies, no public drama. That's what made it all the more chilling. It was invisible. No teachers knew. No parents. But every student felt it. Mia didn't change after that. She still walked the same path to class. Still sat in the corner. Still wore the same old sweater with the patched sleeve. But people moved aside now. Not out of fear of her fists, but fear of something worse. Being seen by her. Being understood by her. She had a way of reading people, breaking them down, finding the cracks beneath their armor. She had shown everyone that cruelty has consequences. Not always right away. Not always obvious. But if you push the wrong person too far, don't expect them to scream. Expect them to watch. Wait, and then rewrite your world. And that note, the final line, was her signature. Her mark. A sentence that didn't need to shout to be remembered. It was simple, clean, honest. You tore my clothes, but I tore apart your lives. Fair trade. Fair? Indeed. They thought I was weak. But they mistook silence for surrender and patience for fear. That was their biggest mistake. People like Tessa, Brooke, and Leela, girls who thrived on attention, on dominance, on fake smiles, couldn't understand someone like me. To them, power meant loudness, popularity, control over others. They believed that if you didn't fight back immediately, you were nothing. An easy target. Just another background face in their glittering little kingdom. They had no idea that quiet people see everything. We collect every word, every action. And we remember, I didn't come to this school to make enemies. I came to start over. I had already lived through enough pain back home. Watching my mom cry silently at night when she thought I was asleep. Hearing my name whispered like pity by teachers who didn't know how to help me. I wanted this school to be different. I stayed out of everyone's way. I smiled politely. I didn't try to be popular or edgy or noticed. But for some people, kindness is an invitation for cruelty. The day they cornered me, I realized I was still surrounded by the same type of people. Different faces, same venom. They laughed as they pulled my hoodie, and the sound of tearing fabric was louder than anything I'd heard that day. It wasn't just clothes they tore. It was my dignity. My effort to blend in. They didn't even stop when I tried to pull away. They just filmed it like it was entertainment. A viral moment. A laugh on a loop. I remember walking home that afternoon, hoodie sleeve flapping in the wind, the cold air stinging my arm. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked. Every step quieter than the last, but heavier. Something inside me had shifted. A thread had snapped. Not in fear, but in resolve. I wasn't going to be a victim again. I had been quiet, yes. But silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. The next day, I began my work. Not with threats or fists, but with observation. I watched Tessa's every move. What made her smile? What made her nervous? I noticed how her bravado slipped the moment she saw a spider, even a plastic one. She once screamed in class because a fly landed on her book. Brooke. She cared more about her online image than her grades. Her Instagram was a carefully curated illusion. Angles, filters, editing apps. She once deleted a photo for showing the faintest glimpse of a pimple. And Leela, she was a lie wrapped in glitter. She mocked others for falling in love, yet she was secretly dating a boy from the school's art club. A sweet, shy guy she hid from everyone because he didn't fit the brand. I wrote it all down. Every detail. I studied them like a test I was going to ace. The day I struck back, it wasn't a grand explosion. It was a series of surgical cuts. Precise. Cold. Irrefutable. Tessa's locker surprise was simple. 3D printed spiders, timed to move slightly with heat sensors. I planted them before first period. By third, her scream echoed across the hall. Phones were out. People laughed. Her bravado cracked like glass. She didn't come to school the next day. Brooke's downfall was digital. I accessed her cloud storage through an old backup she had forgotten to delete. One simple upload, and her Instagram turned into a gallery of unedited truth. Not cruel. Just real. But real was enough to destroy the fake world she lived in. No one bullied her. They just stopped caring. And for someone like her, that was worse than hate. Leela's secret came last. The photo, her and the boy, was sweet, innocent, but exposed without her control, it unraveled her. The same girls she gossiped with turned their backs, not because she dated him, but because she lied. She cried in the hallway. No one comforted her. I watched from a distance, not with joy but with justice. And through it all I stayed invisible. I never bragged, never posted, never said a word, except for one note. One sentence, you tore my clothes, but I tore apart your lives. Fair trade. I left it where they'd find it. Handwritten, no signature. No need for one. They knew. Everyone knew. And that was the point. But here's the truth, the real truth. I didn't do this because I enjoyed revenge. I did it because I had to teach them. Not just for me, but for every quiet girl they laughed at. Every student they humiliated for fun. For the boy with glasses they mocked in science class. For the girl who wore hand-me-downs and sat alone at lunch. I did it for the ones who didn't have the strength, yet. Because sometimes, the only way to stop a monster is to show them that you have teeth too. Not to bite without cause, but to defend, to strike when pushed too far. They thought I was weak, but weakness isn't silent. It's not patient. That's strength in disguise. And once I decided to stop hiding, they finally saw me for what I truly am. Not a victim, not a follower. That's what people whispered weeks later, when the dust finally settled and the chaos she'd unleashed started to make sense. Maya hadn't gone to teachers, hadn't cried to counselors, hadn't begged for help. She had handled it all herself. Not because she didn't believe in authority, but because authority never believed in people like her. She knew what would happen if she walked into the principal's office and said, "They ripped my clothes." They'd nod, maybe scold the bullies, maybe give a few days suspension, but nothing would really change. And Mia didn't want temporary justice. She wanted something that would stick, something that would leave a scar, not on their skin, but on their ego. That's why what she did wasn't just payback. It was a statement, a message to every person watching from the sidelines. Because everyone saw what happened in the schoolyard that day. People laughed. People filmed. But no one helped. Not one person stepped forward. And Maya had seen it all from the ground up, her torn sleeve flapping like a flag of humiliation, their faces lit by phone screens, the silence of the crowd louder than the bullies' laughter. So she didn't just punish the girls who hurt her. She exposed the system that enabled them. She turned the whole school into a stage and made them the unwilling stars of their own downfall. That was her brilliance. She didn't lash out. She created a mirror and made them look. And what they saw, it destroyed them. Because the thing about Tessa, Brooke, and Lila, their power wasn't real. It was borrowed. It came from people fearing them, following them, admiring their glittering illusions. Mia didn't break their bones. She broke the illusion. And when that shattered, there was nothing left to stand on.